was life like in ancient Sumeria, history's first civilization? Well, we know that they lived tens of thousands of years from the Sumerian kings lists that we have on tablets. This is the example of it here. Tens of thousands of years that they lived and reigned. We know that they had flight into space. We know that they're connected with, from what Zechariah Sitchin tells us, Planet X Nibiru. We know that they had a tremendous knowledge of mathematics and architecture. This is one of the ziggurats that they had. They had the Epic of Gilgamesh, and you'll find that in the playlist in my videos of playlist, the Epic of Gilgamesh. And we also know that they're somehow connected to the Atlanteans that had tremendous advanced technology. So what was their life like? Life went through some incredible changes when the first cities were built. And one of them was Ur, the city of Abraham's birth. Up until then, nearly every person had to work as a farmer or a hunter, moving from place to place in a constant struggle to survive. All that changed about 7,000 years ago when Sumer, the first civilization, began. For the first time in history, people moved into safety of a walled city. And for the first time, they didn't have to hunt or farm. They could become builders, astrologers, teachers. Please support my Patreon channel since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. My Patreon channel will have 5 different videos from my YouTube channel every day. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. So since they were living in cities, they could be builders, astrologers, teachers. They could develop things that until then no one had ever dreamed of. And it was the dawn of history, the greatest change humans have ever undergone. What must have it been like? What was it like for the first people who put aside their farms and their hunting tools and moved into the first cities? And how different it was from life today. It's impossible to say for sure what they experienced, but in the ruins of the first cities, there are a few hints. Archaeologists and historians have scoured over the remains of Sumer to give us a glimpse of life in mankind's first civilization. Life revolved around a temple, so they had religion. The first city started as temples to the gods. They were built around a temple and run by a priest called Ensi, who ran religious services and acted as kings to the people who lived near them. They were religious centers through and through, and the first people likely moved into the close to the temples of their gods. There would not have been a non-believer among them. They were expected to make an offering before setting up their homes, and they had to contribute a part of what they grew to the temple. As the communities around these temples grew, though their purposes changed, the first shops and trade networks were set up in the courtyards of the temples, and the first secular jobs were created. Some of the elite left their farms and became professional traders, seamstresses, artists, and messengers. Beer and taxes. The priests' kings set up an early system of taxation to feed their workers. Every family living within the protection of the city had to contribute a part of what they grew to the temple. The temple would then use what they've earned to feed their priests, their craftsmen, and their traders. Beer was usually how people were paid. In Sumer, beer was not just a way to get a drink. It was as thick as a milkshake and loaded with nutrients. More often than not, it would be served as the main course of a meal. That it got you drunk was just an added bonus. Now, other ways, the other way the temple would tax you was to call you into work on public building projects. People would be called out of their homes, forced to spend a few months upgrading the temple or building new city walls. And soon, through the power of conscripted labor, these cities became the safest places on earth. Life inside and outside the city walls. The city walls served 2 purposes. Ostensibly, they were a way to keep the people safe. They protected them against the neighboring cities, where warlords were starting to wrestle power from the priests and invade their neighbors. But in practice, they also served a second purpose. They made a thick clay wall that divided the rich from the poor. The most powerful men were those who did not grow their own food. They were the priests, the craftsmen, the administrators, and the traders who lived off the taxes gathered from the poor. They lived in homes made out of mud bricks, designed to keep them cool through the blistering Sumerian summers, and they had slaves and hired entertainers who would come into their homes and sing them songs or tell them stories while the family feasted. But on the outside were the farmers. They spent their days tilling the soil and growing their crops, then came home to a hut made out of reeds tied together in tight bundles. They slept on mats of woven straw on the floor, and when it got cold, they burned palm fronds in a shallow pit in the middle of their huts. The beginning of education? Life could change at any moment. The lowliest farmer could work his way up to the top as long as he was willing to work hard enough. The farmers owned their land, and if they worked hard enough, they could buy more. Then they could sell their land out to others at a profit and grow even wealthier. Steadily, they could work their way up to a place inside the city walls. Literacy was the best way in. As the Sumerians started to trade, tax, and hire workers, they found a need to keep track of everything they've done. They developed the first the first written language, the cuneiform. Reading and writing became the key to being an administrator, and the first schools were built. Learning cuneiform writing, though, was not easy. It took 12 years in school, starting at the age of 7, for a boy to learn everything he needed to know to become a scribe or a priest. He would work from dusk to dawn, copying down what his teacher wrote on a tablet, and he'd often get a beating if he made a mistake. The very wealthy would hire private tutors to keep teaching the children, even after the classes ended. A noble boy who earned enough could become a priest, and that would make him one of the most powerful men in the city. Sumerian parents were willing to sacrifice everything to get their children to the top. Social status. In practice, though, it was very difficult to change your status. The schools were prohibitively expensive, and so it was very rare that anyone could move up in social standing, while a few living inside the city walls managed to turn their children into priests. There's no record of anyone on the outside ever successfully moving in. And if things went poorly, they could get a lot worse. If a family built up enough debts, they could be forced to sell their children into slavery to pay off their debt, of course, and if they still could not make their payments, they could be dragged into slavery themselves. Still, some made it. Some who became slaves managed to earn enough to buy their own freedom, and some commoners rose all the way up to the top. One woman named Ku Baba started life as a tavern keeper, and in time became the supreme ruler of a town called Kish. And above all, though, they got the chance to be part of one of the greatest experiments in human history. Within their walled cities, the first written language was created, the first trading routes were built, and the first laws were established. They were to witness the birth of civilization. This was originally on Ancient Origins, published here under Creative Commons on Collective Spark by Steve McCamley. Thank you for your support and your patience. As you know, my YouTube channel had recently, a week ago, a video concerning something of the pandemic, and it was taken down and a strike was put on me, and that's why I could not post anything for a week. But thank you for your patience, and thank you especially to those who support me on my Patreon channel. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.